Lady Lane listeners. I'm Michelle, your co host, and today's episode is a special deep dive into the topic that's been buzzing around with curiosity neuroplasticity. Joining me is the wonderful Stacy, our go to expert on all things brain related. Stacy, welcome back to Lady Lane. Did you
Thanks,
leave?
Michelle. Excited to be here with you and unravel the mysteries of neuroplasticity with you.
So, Stacy, let's kick things off for our listeners who might be new to the term. What is neuroplasticity?
Okay, that's a great way to start. Okay, so let's imagine that the brain is a city with roads and construction. Neuroplasticity is like the continuous road work, construction, and the redevelopment that's happening within our brains. It's the brain's remarkable ability to adapt, reorganize, and form new connections, neural connections based on our experiences throughout our entire lives.
Huh. The brain as a great metropolis. I
Yeah.
love that analogy. So, why should our listeners care about neuroplasticity?
Well, understanding what it is and then actively engaging it, it can enhance your cognitive functions, it boosts your memory, and it promotes overall brain health.
Hmm.
So, going back to the analogy of the road construction, um, it's like being the city planner for your brain. So, you're ensuring that the roads are well maintained and new constructions are being built strategically. And
Hmm.
just like most road construction projects, you want to start small. So when you get into this brain exercising, you want to start by challenging your brain with something like daily puzzles or crossword puzzles, like a fun brain game app. It's just like adding that little tiny workout for your brain into the day-to-day routine. So for me, I got totally addicted to the New York Times. They have an app now that has
Yes.
Wordle
Yep.
and Connections. I started with Connections first, and everybody else was playing that Wordle, and I was like
Yeah, yeah,
totally not
yeah.
interested in that. But when Connections was added to their app, which they also have other games on there, like I became totally addicted. So it's the
Hmm.
last thing I do at night is my little, brain challenges, and it's the perfect like kind of end of day routine for me.
Right,
So
right.
that's how I kind of added into my brain exercise into my routine.
I love Wordle. Jason and I play it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back and
Yeah,
forth.
it's a
Although it does prove how stupid I am sometimes because I'm like, I have like three of the letters. I'm like, I don't know what this word is. I can't decode it. But I'm dyslexic. So game at first was like torturous. Like
oh,
I just
sure.
could not decode what was going. But I'm getting much better at it now. So now it only takes me like maybe three or four to get it. Sometimes I
Right.
go, I mean, of course, there's times where I don't get it at all, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, have
Jason and
you
I.
done Connections yet?
Which one is that? Explain
That
that one
is
again.
where they have, like, the group of words, and you have to find the 4 words that go into a group, so they're connected some way.
Oh no, I haven't played that one yet.
Okay, and sometimes it's, like, dead easy, but then other times it was hilarious. I think, like, a couple of weeks ago, everyone on TikTok was like, "Okay, whoever the creator or the manager of Connections is, like, are you having a nervous breakdown?" Because it was like these connections were so, like, obscure and, like, no one was getting them, and everyone's like, "Are you okay?" So
Oh
it's
wow.
and it's good for, Kent it's something that Kent does too.
Okay.
So that's something that he and I can kind of do together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that, helps him with his brain exercises, and, well, who doesn't need it? I mean, I certainly do.
Yeah, yeah. I know.
So
I
anyway,
know.
even, and there's tons of apps out there that, are new brain, puzzles. I guess maybe it's looking at puzzles in a new way. Before we thought it was just a game and it didn't really have any kind of benefit, but now
Right.
realizing through the science that these puzzles actually have a health benefit for us, and that's our brain health. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
mhm.
used to play Sudoku.
Yes,
That one
yes.
was good too, especially with the numbers too, because being dyslexic, numbers and letters really are
Mhm.
a thorn in my side.
Yeah.
But that I always found to be challenging enough that it didn't make me want to throw the book out the window.
Yes.
But then I was like, oh, good, it got my brain working. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah.
So you mentioned neuroplasticity is like that big busy city. Actually,
Mhm.
kind of sounds like an HOA going into a home where they take care of all the roads and all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So where did that concept come from? Who's the brains, so to speak, behind that?
Oh, okay. So, I guess the brains behind the brain would be the pioneers of the study of neuroplasticity. That includes a guy named Donald Hebb, who gave us the famous saying that neurons that fire together wire together. And that's
Okay.
basically what neuroplasticity does, is bringing those neurons together.
Hmm.
And then you have Michael Merzenich, who took it further, showing us that the brain could actually reorganize itself based on sensory input. And
Right.
these relevations changed the game of neuroscience because it proved the fact that the brain is not a fixed entity. So that was like the big um insight that changed the whole game.
Okay. So history making discoveries.
Yeah.
Um, so knowing the history, how can our listeners apply these to their lives?
Well, knowing that our brains can adapt helps us to understand that we can change our brains.
Hmm.
So, in acknowledging this, opens a world of possibilities for professional and personal growths. Basically, it's the recognition that you're never too old to learn a new skill. Like, what was that saying? Like, you can't teach an old dog a new trick.
Right,
Well,
right,
now we know that that's not true because
right.
you can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and I know we just talked about this, about like the apps and things that we've been playing, but is there anything else that you've done over the years that has been like a new skill for you, or have you had like a pretty significant experience that kind of like changed how you looked at things in life?
Well, I mean, going through menopause would do that to you.
That's true. That's
That totally rewires your brain. I don't know if
yes.
it rewires it for the better or the good, but yeah, definitely. Yeah. I
Hmm.
think, yeah, yeah, I think I definitely have seen a huge difference. I feel like I've kind of come through something, like my brain kind of matured, I guess, a little bit, I could say that.
Hmm.
I went back to school, so I've been using my brain to, study and all of that. When I first started, I was like, "Oh God, I don't think I could do this. Like,
Right.
I don't know if I can take a test." How
Right.
long has it been? Although I'm a teacher in real life, so, I do give tests.
Hmm.
I make them up. I don't ever take them.
Right.
But yeah, so as I've been going through all of this, it's been yeah, I can definitely see a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's, for someone who this might be new for them, it's just, take a moment to kind of reflect and think about the things that you've been through recently and, um, try and understand how adaptive we are because we do change based on experiences and
Yeah.
recognizing that that's your brain's power. I mean, that's
Right.
huge. So,
Yeah. I have a quick story about this actually.
okay,
So
cool.
my mom has blepharospasm, which is dystonia in her eyes.
Okay.
And so her eyes flutter and spasm a lot. So what happened was when my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, this started happening in her brain. Something misfired in her brain, and that's what started happening. And so she found a great doctor over in Canada, in Toronto, and he did a lot of work with neuroplasticity and actually taught her how to rewire her brain so that it would, help. She still has the fluttering, she still has the dystonia,
Mhm.
But you can see when she's really working on it and working on creating new pathways for her brain, it lessens, and then it kind of creeps back and then she's got to kind of do it again. And then, it goes
Yeah.
back and forth. I'm not 100% sure what it is exactly that she does, like the exercises that she
Right.
does, but she is a big, when I told her we were doing our next cast on neuroplasticity, she's like, you know all about this. I'm like, well, I don't know all about this. I said, but I it is what she's doing. So, but the very interesting thing about it is that music helps her eyes stay open.
Mhm.
So, and Adele, for some reason, Adele is the one that works best for
Huh.
her. So, if she has to drive, she doesn't really drive anymore, but if she has to drive, if she puts Adele on in the car, her eyes stay open and she can drive.
Huh, how about that?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And she can't watch TV because the light, that blue light flickers too much for her.
Hmm.
But if she has the Kardashians on, she can watch it. Like, how strange is that, right? It's just like certain things that her brain is picking up on.
Yeah.
And from there, she builds on that. So I think now she can watch a little bit more TV.
Mhm.
But yeah, isn't that interesting? Music
Yeah.
and whatever their voices, whatever sensory that voice is, whatever that does. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's
That was my little
amazing.
story about neuroplasticity. That's all I know
Yeah.
about it. So let's get practical.
Okay.
Uh, what can our listeners do to actively engage with neuroplasticity in their day-to-day lives? Like my mom,
Right.
listens to the radio to keep or listens to Adele to keep her eyes
Right.
open. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep it into three key areas. So the first being lifestyle,
Hmm.
second being cognitive training, which is probably the things that she's doing, and then social connections.
Okay.
So starting with lifestyle, it's important to prioritize regular exercise, the balanced diet, the quality sleep, because your physical health directly influences your brain health. I mean, we just discussed this in the last episode of the self care during perimenopause. It's
Right.
the same strategies that you discussed then. And that's what's, pretty much in line with your brain's health. So,
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's like a mental exercise instead of a physical exercise. It's a mental
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
And isn't
It's,
it amazing how it all interconnects with each other?
yeah.
So like you have to eat well, you have to sleep well, you have to manage your stress,
Mhm.
mindful breathing, mindful meditation. Yeah.
Yeah, all of those things are, we talk about it in these different contexts, but in the greater context, and we do say it's a holistic approach, but I
Hmm.
think maybe it's helpful when we are breaking it down under these specific
Yeah.
topics
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
maybe everyone starts to realize how encompassing these things that we're saying about self-care really are.
Right. Well, that's what holistic means, the
Yeah,
whole being. Right, right.
right.
Yeah,
Yep,
and I think a lot of people think holistic is we're out there, tree hugging and eating granola all day long. I'm like, no, no,
right.
no. We
Yeah.
all need to do it. We all need to eat. We all need to sleep. We all need to take care of ourselves, and you will
Right.
feel much better. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've definitely, as a society, have gotten so far away from that. And it feels like, some of us are really trying to kind of pull that back and be like, look,
Yes.
you need to take care of this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And with that, we could get into a whole culture discussion because of how life is over here in Switzerland. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say Europe as a whole, but my experience here in Switzerland versus my experiences in the United States. So that's a whole different conversation,
Yeah.
but it is the focus and awareness of the holisticness of our well-being. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, now if we move into cognitive training, this is what we were just talking about with the New York Times crossword puzzles.
Mhm.
Everyone needs to be challenging their brains on a daily basis, and it doesn't have to be puzzles because maybe someone doesn't like that so much, but it could be learning a new instrument. Like before we started this episode, I was telling Michelle that I bought a banjo because I wanted to learn how to play banjo. So I have it. Did I learn it? No, not yet, but it's there for me when I'm ready to. or trying a dance class. It's,
Hmm.
the important thing is to find that activity that's going to excite you, to get you motivated, and you need your brain to learn how to do something new. So, again, there's all kinds of things that you can do. I mean, look at the access to information we have today. There's YouTube that has lessons on everything. I mean,
Everything.
mechanics or DIY stuff. Look at all the women who are like renovating homes. Like, I watch them in awe and I'm like, I could never do that, but they do.
Yeah.
My thing is more like language and art and music kind of stuff. You and I are kind of similar in that way.
Right.
But I mean, there's online courses, there's apps, there's YouTube, there's Facebook. I mean, TikTok, you learn cooking and all that other kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of finding that thing that gets those neurons firing. So,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is it for you, Michelle, that that activities that you find stimulating and kind of keep you, I guess, engaged?
Well, I think when you were just talking, I was thinking about actually at the gym. Like when you're learning a new routine or a new skill, you start out real small and
Hmm.
you do one aspect of it.
Right.
And then you build upon that. And then as you're building, you're learning, your body is learning what to do, your brain is learning how to do that. Like there's this one thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm doing it with a medicine ball because I can't do it with the kettlebell. The kettlebell's too heavy. I almost killed myself because if I drop the kettlebell on my head, it's not going to work. So, the first step of it is just to lift the ball up, right?
Hmm.
Then let go of one so that you have your one arm, and then you have to lift yourself up. So it's a whole routine, but you will do it in little tiny sections to build the muscle to be able to do it, which I think is very similar to neuroplasticity, where you're building the pathways to learn how to do something to move yourself forward.
Yeah.
And again, it's all encompassing
Yeah.
in how you're living. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You've
Yeah.
nailed it.
Nailed it. Excellent. I love when that happens. So you also mentioned social connections.
Mhm.
So why or how are they crucial to the neuroplasticity, and how can the listeners foster those connections?
Okay. Well, this is the third thing that we talked about, the key aspect. And we're social beings. Our brains are wired for
Yeah.
social interactions. So, having meaningful relationships and positive social engagements are stimulating and they stimulate the brain. It's responsible for emotional regulations and your different cognitive functions. I mean, think about how you feel after you've had, like, coffee with a good friend, or you said you have, like, breakfast with your mom. I mean, those types of conversations and connections, it brings positive energy to your world, and you probably talk about things that you wouldn't normally think of. So that's
Right.
engaging your brain and your thought process to, go beyond your regular day-to-day routine.
Right. It also keeps you practicing listening and responding.
Mhm.
So if you're really engaged in what you're listening to and can come up with a response, because a lot of people don't even think about that is something that, you can lose the ability to do that, to really listen and to really come up with a response. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this and I think it is fairly prevalent in today's culture to not listen to the what someone's saying, but listening so that you can just have a reaction to it,
Right.
I mean, so that's the difference of being an active listener is that you're not preparing your response, you're listening actively to what that person's saying. And then you think about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that I think we all need to practice a little bit more instead of being so reactionary in our conversations, because otherwise that wouldn't really be a conversation, would it? Not really.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing my certification to be a life coach,
Mhm.
our our classes were held um just audio. We didn't have the visual,
Mm,
which was very interesting because you had to listen or else because you had no other cues as to what was going on except
right,
to listen. They did that on purpose so that you would learn how to actively listen and not just jump in with a question because it may not be the correct question to ask, or you couldn't kind of come up with a question until you heard what the person was actually saying. And we
right,
would get like, they would, we would every other week we would get not tested, but we would have our case studies with our other classmates who we never saw personally until after the class was over. I had no
wow,
idea what any of them looked like,
that's
except for Petula,
fascinating.
because Petula and I meet all the time.
Mhm,
But yeah, it was very interesting how to turn your brain off from thinking while you're listening, if that makes sense. It's just
yeah,
you have to just sit there and be. So that was the thing. You have to be,
mhm,
right? Just
yeah,
be. You don't have
yeah,
to do anything else. You're just there to listen. And if something sparks the curiosity, then you can ask a question. But other than that, you just need to be there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Mhm.
why it's so important to, like, reach out to those people that you haven't talked to in a while, you know? I mean, because you have these conversations where you need to hear what they're saying about what's been going on. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, like, when you and I started getting together and talking, I mean, I don't know how you felt afterwards, but afterwards, like, when the call ended, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that was so great." Like, and it got my
Yeah, yeah,
mind
yeah.
thinking way beyond anything that had been introduced to me that day, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
And how interesting is that when you talk to somebody who ignites that in you, and then like you talk to someone who just totally diminishes that, right? Like you can go both ways. And those, so if you're coming out of a conversation where you're excited and it's like great and I can't wait to do it again, those are your pathways being built to do that. And then when someone comes in and squashes it, those are your pathways too to tell you to stay away from that. Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
You gotta listen to both sides of and how you're feeling so that it creates the correct pathway.
right.
Like I know with my therapist, like because I have OCD, so it those repetitive thoughts over and over and over again. And she's like, what you need to do is when they start happening, you have to redirect them because you don't want them to become part of the pathway. You want
Mhm.
them to go to wherever they need to go to stay there and then create the new pathway without that. So
Right.
yeah, it's so fascinating, so
Yes.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's, all of these things, if just getting it all together is is just so good for you. And again, going back to our previous episodes, we're not really saying anything different. We're just talking about a different aspect of the influence of self-care and how it, enables
Yeah.
you to have that stronger brain capacity and how it helps in your mental health. And honestly, like, yeah, having those conversations that diminish, that leads into a whole different conversation. I've just started, I have psychology in my background, but I'm starting to kind of integrate Jungian psychology, which is about, how you deal with other people and being triggered and your projections and all this stuff. Like it's just massive. And so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Mhm.
my God, it's like numbers. It's just infinity.
It really is. I mean,
Oh
there's just
God.
I mean, yeah, it really is. So,
Yeah. All right. So we touched upon
okay.
a bunch of different aspects. And
Mhm.
so let's talk a little bit now about mindfulness. How does
Mm.
that contribute to neuroplasticity?
Yeah, this is a great thing to add into it. So, mindful practices like meditation, deep breathing, which you took us through in that last episode,
Yep.
um, they have been shown to positively impact neuroplasticity. So, why is that? Because they promote relaxation, they reduce stress, they create an environment that's conducive to brain growth. I mean, you can't I mean, you are learning when you're in a stressful state, but that's not the where you want to live. because then
Right.
you're getting into that fight or flight, and that's not a healthy place to live. So these mindful practices bring you down into a healthy state, which is going to help, I mean, everything. But in this context with neuroplasticity, it's going to help that brain growth and the brain health and those neurons and creating those new connections.
Right. Right.
And um, and again, it just even a quick timeout or 5 minutes of focused breathing. I mean, it's easy to bring yourself down out of those stressful situations that is just good for you generally.
Yeah. I wonder how cortisol affects neuroplasticity. I would be interested to do
Yeah.
some uh no, brain just turned off. Menopause brain fog.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you know what? I hadn't actually all the stuff that I've been reading, I don't know that anyone's really talked about cortisol levels, which is interesting now that you bring that up.
Yeah, you mean,
I'll
you
have
would
to look
think,
into that and
yeah, I would
maybe
think
have
that
like a little follow up or just throw something on in the comment section about how
yeah, how
that
cortisol affects neuroplasticity. Because if
yeah.
you're in that state of fight or flight all the time, and that affects it, then the cortisol is definitely doing something.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're under a huge amount of stress, which for a couple of years ago, I was like, just that was, I was living in high
Yeah.
stress
Yeah, you
day
are.
in and day out. I mean, it just did a number on me physically
Mhm.
and emotionally, honestly. I mean, it just, really tore me up where I think even today, I'm probably on the end of recovery from
Right.
having been in that state for so long. So,
Yeah.
having that feeling of it was funny because there was one day where I was just kind of like, I'm not worried about anything. I was like, where's my what do I do?
Yeah.
Because I was in such a constant state of stress and worry that when
Right.
those things resolved themselves, I was just kind of like, now I have some time to do
Yeah.
something.
Now what am I gonna do?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
but
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah,
Very
that's
interesting.
interesting. We'll do a follow-up on that because, that's something good to know. Mhm.
Yeah. It just like kind of popped into my head when you
Yeah,
said fight or flight. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the
yeah.
cortisol. I wonder if
Mhm.
that does have a
Yeah,
something to do with it.
for sure.
So let's continue on and let's go into some strategies that that will enhance our well-being. So can you shed some light on that and what the consequences of neglecting your brain
Mm.
maintenance can be?
Well,
I mean, we all
um
know it, but let's talk about it.
yeah, yeah. Well, like, okay, let's go back to our city planner analogy. So, if any city that's left unattended, if you're neglecting your brain's health, it's going to lead to decline, so cognitive decline. You might experience some memory issues. Um, Again, like I just said, you could have an overall reduced, like overall well-being. I was living in that state of stress and it affected me in every single way.
Right.
Um, so, but focusing and talking specifically about the brain and the neural pathways, if you're not maintaining them regularly, they might become sluggish, and then the communication between them can kind of break down.
Right.
And so this will how would you notice that? Like concentration is
Mhm.
difficult. You might have a decrease in your creativity.
Being able
Um,
to follow
y-
directions.
yeah, yeah,
Step.
and then there just might be well, I know that they say, because of all the studies with neurodegenerative diseases now,
Yeah.
this is a really big focus on that you want to keep engaging your mind and your thoughts and brain, so that you can kind of decrease those risks of
I remember my grandmother always doing the crossword.
yes.
Yeah, and she always said, "This is gonna make me very, this is gonna keep me going forever." And I'm like, "I don't know how a crossword puzzle is gonna keep you going forever," but she was
Well, now
right.
you know.
Now I know. She
Yep.
was right. She was always right. I
Yeah.
don't think she was ever
Oh,
wrong. So yeah.
yeah. Well, grandmas are good like that.
Yeah, yeah, right. So the neuroplasticity can lead to that kind of cognitive decay
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being,
Yeah.
yeah, we got to be those proactive city planners and,
Right,
and
right.
got to ensure that, those little cities up there are thriving and
Mhm.
really evolving. Like you don't want that little city in your brain to like stop growing.
Right, 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 right.
So, yeah.
Put up a target in each one. That'll keep you
Yeah,
going.
right. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So we have taken a fantastic journey into the world of neuroplasticity. And to our Lady Lean listeners, remember your brain is an ever evolving masterpiece. Embrace the power of neuroplasticity and see how it transforms your life.
That's right, Michelle. And to everybody out there, be sure to keep exploring and learning. And you want to just keep on thriving on Lady Lane.
Yes. So that's a wrap for
Yeah.
today's episode. Subscribe, share, and leave us your review or a comment. Until next time, stay curious, stay fabulous, and keep unlocking the potential of your amazing brain on Lady Lane. See you
That's so
next
great.
time.